For the last couple of weeks, the Ukraine war has been heating up substantially. We've seen the Russians pushing in the Donbas region and the Ukrainians pushing into the Kursk and possibly the Belgorod Oblast. So with all this movement going on, why is this taking place now? Why are both Russia and Ukraine going on the offensive at this time? Well, there's a couple reasons for that, and the biggest one is probably not what you were expecting. Today on War Made Simple, we're going to take another dive into the Ukraine war. Hey guys, Bill here, and welcome back to World Made Simple and to another video on the Ukraine war. It's been a while since we talked about this, primarily because there's a lot of fucking war going on right now, and I don't like to speculate on this channel in terms of, hey, I think this is going on or this is going on, especially when it comes to a conflict like this. I'm happy to make kind of guesses, best estimates, that kind of stuff on events in the past or events that have already happened, but in this regard, it's very hard to comment on a day-by-day war that changes almost on an hourly basis. So with that out of the way, let's talk about what's going on. The last couple of weeks have been kind of nuts. The Ukrainians have invaded the Belgorod and the Kursk Oblast and have been pushing into the area. Now the Russians have been making gains back in this region, but it's been slow going at best. Additionally, the Russians have been pushing in another area, the Donbas, an area that they've been seeing a lot more success than they have the last few years. And all of this is happening kind of at once. And not a whole lot of people are asking, why now? There has been literal months where both the Russians and the Ukrainians have not been really pushing. They've mostly just been doing shelling continuously of each other. There's been some minor pushes here and there, but nothing huge. So why now? Well, I'm gonna say something that's gonna make a couple of you go, what? And a couple of others go, no, there's no way. And the answer is Donald Trump. Yeah. We're talking about American politics now. Great. So I'm not going to delve into American politics in terms of what's going on with the election and all that, but Trump came out and said something about a month and a half ago that kind of made Putin and Zelensky get into gear in this war. And what he said was essentially his plan to end the Ukraine war. He wants to end it day one of being elected, not in office, being elected. So that would be in November. What he wants to do to end it is basically declare a ceasefire. What that means is wherever the borders fall, when he calls that ceasefire, are the borders for the negotiation. And that is his plan, to basically negotiate the end of the Ukraine war. A lot of people are saying there's no way that he could actually do this. And a lot of American politicians and American citizens agree with that there is no way that something like this could happen. And on first glance, yeah, I would 100% agree. But it seems like Zelensky and Putin are actually taking him at his word at this. Because ever since that was kind of made public, both sides have been slamming everything that they can into each other. Artillery, aircraft, soldiers, everything. And it seems to only be escalating as the weeks are progressing. The Russians are putting more and more into the Donbas pocket, and the Ukrainians are putting more and more into the Kursk pocket. Really not sure who's being successful, who's losing. As I said, there's too much fog of war. But what we do know is both sides are fighting heavily. And it seems like they're doing so in anticipation of a Trump victory. I'm not saying he's going to win, but Ukraine and Russia at the very least are planning for that possibility. Because if he does get in and he does tell them, you're ending this war now, they might have to. Why would Putin feel threatened by this, though? He's constantly throwing rhetoric at the West saying, we'll bomb your cities, we'll level your towns, we'll leave everything in ashes. Well, because he kind of is playing a bluff. I said before that they really can't stand up to the United States, and it's not necessarily because they lack the industry, they do, or because they lack the manpower, they do. It's mainly because they don't have the weapons. They've used half of their tank stockpiles and 2/3 of their artillery in terms of towed artillery in this war. So in 2.5 years, the majority of the Russian stockpiles have been depleted. Their primary weapons on the field range from World War II artillery cannons to Cold War tanks. Standing up to NATO with those weapons is not feasible, and Putin knows that. A lot of people are saying, well, what about the nuclear option? Putin knows that if he pulls that nuclear card, it's game over for all of Russia, period. And for all of the flaws that Putin has, he does still care about Russia as a country. He might not necessarily show it for the people on certain days and most days of the week looking at drafts, but he still cares about Russia, and he would not risk nuclear war with the United States over Ukraine. But he knows that he can't stop the United States from interfering in Ukraine. We've seen it so many times. This week alone, they allowed Ukraine to start using long-range missile strikes. Literally today, as I'm making this, they struck a munition plant inside of Russia, deep inside of Russia. They can't stop American weapons inside their own country being used by a foreign nation. What happens when the Americans are the ones using those weapons? Putin knows it's a losing war, and he knows that he'll be forced to the table. Now, that sounds very speculative, and it is, but it's a nearly 90% chance that that's going to happen, just because he doesn't have a choice. His back's on the wall. Now, flip side, what about Zelensky? Well, Zelensky's ticked about this too, because he wants to take back all of Ukraine, and by Trump's plan, he's not going to be able to take all that territory back. He's just not. So he's going to lose territory. He needs to take as much Russian territory to bring to the table as possible and force the Russians to give up more of the Ukrainian territory than essentially he's going to be able to take. Whether this works or not, we really don't know, but both sides are not going to be happy about this if Trump gets into office and forces this deal forward. Europe, though, is probably going to be ecstatic. As much garbage as they've given Trump, they want this war over. So they will be thrilled about this if he's able to make this move. In terms of the rest of the world, it really doesn't matter save for one nation, and that's China. If Russia fails to take Ukraine, an invasion of that little island off their coastline, not really going to look so much like a good idea anymore. But we'll see what happens on that front. Regardless, both Russia and Ukraine are pressing forward to take as much territory as they can to bring it to the bargaining table if Trump gets elected. We'll ultimately see what plays out, and I think November for this year is going to be interesting regardless of who wins the presidential election. Because if it is Trump and he brings this deal to the table, we might see an end to the Ukraine war. And if he doesn't and Kamala wins, the question is, what is she going to do? And is she going to take use of what's been presented to her by essentially what Trump said? Would she take something similar of a stance to what Trump did, or would she change her posture? We really don't know. The Harris campaign hasn't come out with anything for the Ukraine war as of today, but maybe that'll change. So I know this video is a little bit different from what I normally do, but I kind of wanted to give everyone kind of an update on the Ukraine war. I haven't done one of these in a little bit. And I want to just say now, I do not want to talk about American politics at all, because American politics is a very volatile topic right now. I'd like to try and avoid it for as long as possible. I know at some point it's going to come up, like in this video, I have to bring it up by default, but not really fun to bring up just from, YouTube comments. So, but anyway, that's all I have for today. Next video you guys will see is me on Monday for our normal tech talk. So with that being said, enjoy your night, folks.